Hello and welcome to another beautiful edition of Iron Port. Iron Port is proudly brought to you by the Ghana Revenue Authority, Goyle Company Limited, Serene Insurance, Ghana Link and the Meridian Port Services, MPS. This program is powered by the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, and our media partner is the Business and Financial Times. Viewers, this week we are going back to the subject of continental trade. As we all know, the Honourable Minister of Trade, Alan Tremanting, has resigned as Trade Minister. What this means is his exit from the Council of Ministers at the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. It is expected that he is not going to be the only political appointee that would leave this council in the near future. What our discussion sought to do is to find out the impact of political changes within the council on the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Take a listen.
And I just want to find out from you how important the role of the Council of Ministers is to the success of the implementation of this whole arrangement.
A critical role. If you look at the architecture of the AfCFTA agreement, apart from the agreement that is the first layer, then you come to the protocols, then you come to the annexes. If you look at it critically, you look at the strategy, you realize that at the apex, the pyramid, is the heads of states. They oversee everything.
Right.
So at extraordinary meetings, everything that has been discussed is submitted to them for approval or disapproval before implementation.
Yes.
The next to them are the ministers of trade. So they are the council of ministers.
Right.
So the trade ministers more or less act like liaison between the heads of states and then the secretariat.
All right.
So whatever that, they look at reports. What are the reports that the secretariat have so far?
Right.
And we look at the report, then they also report back to the heads of state. And a very important role so that they play is they give directives. They can decide, in fact, if they give directives, they can decide to give directives that they meet and say, look, we feel that this is not going well this way, this is not going well, we feel that we have to go it this way. But that cannot be implemented unless they, after that meeting, submit that directive or recommendation to the heads of state for adoption. A critical example is when this protocol, which was not, it's not a protocol yet, but it is surely going to be women and youth in trade. It was not part of the traditional agreement. Yeah. But during conversations here and there, like debate was ongoing, and then the ministers felt, look, let us table it before the heads of state.
Right.
So that was tabled at extraordinary summit, and they felt, okay, let us start the conversation. So that is how it looks like. And then I think one of the critical other roles has to do with they also look at reviews, not just report and that, they review. And it's important. If they feel after 5 years, in fact, the exit clause in the agreement is that after 5 years, a country can exit.
Right.
They look at, they can review in terms of the recruitments, finance.
Right.
So they can look at all that. So they play a very critical role. And so they are more like, if you take the Secretary General out, who is more or less at the capacity as assistant or deputy AUC chairperson.
Yeah, okay.
All the rest of the people who are the secretariat, I would say that, yes, the Council of Ministers play a very critical role. And my more concern has to do with the other ministers of trade who form that council.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at the element of continuity as far as the AfCFTA arrangement is concerned, and the change in political landscape of the various countries. How does this affect continuity?
It is. I mean, this is a very important question that you have asked. If you take a critical look at Ghana's case, where the trade minister resigned.
Yes.
Until you are a stakeholder, you wouldn't know the impact. If you take Honorable Alan Tremanting critically, he was not just a policy head. You know, most of the ministers are policy heads to ensure that they implement what the party lines and government manifestos and what have you. But he was beyond that. He was technical person of trade. I'm not holding brief for it, but that is what I'm in that industry. So I know he was at the Africa Trade Policy Center. And that is a wing of the ECA, Economic Community of Africa, under UN.
Yes.
They shape continental trade policies. So he was there. And that was where he was trying to, apply for the World Trade WTO some time ago.
Yes. Yes.
Then, after that side, he came down. So he had initial technical expertise in the whole AfCFTA process.
Right.
So you can put a trade minister there of different background, but when it comes to a certain cause which their technical expertise is needed, there will be an impact.
Right.
And for me, his side there will be impact because they have to get somebody who have the full technical expertise that he had in the course of the AfCFTA implementation. Else, it will slow the implementation process and the drive that Ghana is leading. And it's very important. I'm not talking about political twist to this, but this is the fact. Remember that he was also one of the architects, pioneers of this whole dream.
Right. Yes. Yes.
You can't take it from him.
Yes.
Others contributed, the likes of Honorable Gabra and the likes, but he was very, very instrumental because, as I said, he was at the Africa Trade Policy, which looked at all continental trade policies. So when you are bringing another person on board, apart from the trade negotiators, Ghana have chief negotiator. These are technical people who negotiate on behalf of the country. So if the minister, obviously, if it works that way, to me, if it worked that way, if the minister is not there, I know deputies are good, they're there. If there's a deputy who has that technical expertise, it's good. If not, you can look within and see, because this whole thing is about export-driven, import-driven. So, for example, if you look into Ghana, I'm just making my opinion. You could look at the CEO of the Ghana Export.
Promotion Authority. She's
done a lot. She has the expertise in that. She has also been part of this AfCFTA staff. You look at also the former CEO of Free Zones. Who is also an MP and deputy. Ochubefi. That field, the Free Zones has a kind of similarity with the whole process of this AfCFTA. Economic zones. So, and then, if not...
He's a deputy...
They are not minister. Deputies. No, but he's a deputy.
Yeah, he's a deputy, yes.
So if you're not looking at this book, then the chief negotiators, the chief trade negotiators of the ministries of trade should be the people who could be caretakers of this process of implementation.
Right.
And so, for example, if you go to Ministry of Trade, you could talk about Mr. Mixon.
Mixon.
So ideally, if I'm to advise the president, I say, Mr. President, in the meantime, apart from the chief director of the ministries of trade, the chief trade negotiators of your country should be the ones to make sure they hold the AfCFTA-driven goal, because they have been part from day one. They went to negotiate what we are giving out and what we're taking in. So it is very important, because when these critical people are not there, implementation becomes hold up. Because they knew beyond the policy, the technical expertise because I remember the Alan Chomantin, he came out of 7 clusters for Ghana. Until today, among the about 45 or 44 party states, I've not come across any country yet with a national policy on AfCFTA. Ghana is among the first to launch its national policy on AfCFTA. And so I could tell you what I'm saying. So Nigeria is a big player, but they don't have. So you need to have a continuity policy of expertise when you are really having a continental program like AfCFTA of that kind of nature. And for example, if you look at Kenya, before the current minister, the immediate past, Maina, Honorable Maina,
Yes.
played very key instrumental role with the continental free trade. Currently, Nigeria, they will be having elections in February. So, obviously, the current minister, Honorable Aisha,
Yes.
will also be phasing out. Who continues? And this is the question I think you have been asking. And so I think that it's very, very imperative for us to really take a look and beyond policy, look to critical technical experts within the ministries of trade, not only in Ghana, who can continue with the young African baby dream of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. It is very, very imperative.
Okay, so I know that your organization has been at the forefront of championing private sector participation in trade. And that's, for example, the AfCFTA arrangement. I just want to find out from you, when it comes to regional and sub-regional trade, what is your assessment of the participation of, private sector? Are we there?
Unfortunately, I would say we're not there yet. We're making some progress, but we're not there yet. One must appreciate things that are taking place right now with respect to AfCFTA, the various programs, the support they have from the various institutions, AfriExim Bank, the agriculture, EDB, focusing on agriculture, and Africa Trade Insurance, focusing on the trade insurance for the continent. Now, there are probably 3 or 4 layers of when it comes to private sector concerns. At the national level, we are fragmented. We have too many organizations at the national level representing the private sector. We have, at the regional levels, we may have probably 2 organizations. For example, in the West African belt, we have the Francophone group and we have FAWASI. FAWASI covers all of the African countries.
Right.
Okay. Now there's effort to set up the regional body, which technically should be made up of the of FAWASI and FOPACO. I think that's the name of the organization, all right, from the French group. All right, that will represent the regional body. Then we have the Pan-African bodies. All right. For now, we know very specifically the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce and Industry. All right. That was established in 2009 to represent the private sector at the African Union. Unfortunately, we're only giving an observer status. I'm sorry, an MOU was signed, but we're not giving the status that was requested. And most recently, probably I think it was 2018, 2019, thereabout, by resolution, the heads of states came about a resolution to establish the African Business Council. All right. The AU invited all of the private sector members to attend a meeting. And out of that, we now have the African Business Council. So what we're trying to do now is explore how we can galvanize all of these bodies, one, to strengthen the private sector at the country level. If we can achieve that, bingo, everything else will fall in place. It means that you have a strong voice at the regional level, and you will have a strong voice at the Pan-African, the Pan-African stroke at the AU level. But we're fragmented. And so our focus is try to see how best we can bring these organizations together, all right, so that collectively, at the region, at the country level, at the continent, at the regional level, and at the continental level, we speak with one voice, all right? Because if we truly want to implement AfCFTA, you have to have a strong, vibrant, independent private sector. Right? In the absence of that, we will not work. So one step further, what we have looked at is that, okay, fine. We have been fortunate that the heads of states, and I'm not political, I like to be frank. the signing of the AfCFTA was not a willing arrangement by all of the leaders. Many of the leaders had to call their colleagues and ask them, please sign this. It is in the interest of the continent. If it were not so, we would not have problem implementing the protocols today.
Right.
Okay? So what we're saying is that since the leaders have signed these protocols and implanted in these protocols free movement of people, common currency, and a number of other things, all we're asking them to do is honor the signatures so that the protocols will be implemented. And with the assistance of the UNECA, we've come up with a draft document where we look at the protocols with like various laws across the world, for that matter, all right, whether it has to do with WTO, whether it has to do with EU and so forth. And we've come up with a series of recommendations, all right, that are needed to accelerate the implementation of the AfCFTA program.
Right.
In this case, I will mention the REX protocols as well as the AfCFTA. All right, the AfCFTA protocols derive largely from the REX protocols. But so trade barriers. Who are affected by trade barriers? The private sector.
Right.
Who needs to trade? Louis mentioned earlier about trade facilitation, border issues. You cannot talk about Ghana, cannot talk about doing trade with Benin if there's trade unrest, there's political unrest in the Togo. These are the practical things that the Bill of Rights calls for. We need peace and security.
Yeah.
We need common currency. We need free movement of people. We need to participate on the check and balances at the borders. Okay?
Yes.
An illiterate person should be able to cross any border with their goods without having to be able to read and write. As simple as that. Okay? Even using some color code system. So we need to remove all of these bottlenecks so that trade, so that Africa can truly transform. Now, what we're also talking about, Africa needs its own data. Most of the data we use today are imported data. You do not have your own data. Put your universities to work. Put your specialists to work. So that Africa can come up with its own data that the private sector can utilize and so forth.
So now that you've heard from our experts on the role of the Council of Ministers in the implementation of the AfCFTA policy, as well as the impact of political changes within the Council on the implementation of AfCFTA. Now let us hear from you on your comments and questions based on the discussion we just had. After we go on break, we'll be back with more news. This is Stan. My problem is I can hear a lot of paperwork and discussions, but are we really trading under AfCFTA as African people? Hi Stan. According to the AfCFTA expert, Louis Afo, significant volumes have not been traded in, but a lot of initiatives have been undertaken, especially in the services sector, and he is optimistic that this year we will see a lot of goods traded under AfCFTA. My name is Fifi. Has Ghana made some headway in the implementation of the National Policy Action Plan? I'd like to know. Hello Fifi. Our AfCFTA expert Louis Afo says, yes, a lot of progress has been made, including infrastructural developments such as the Ghana-Burkina Faso Rail Project, port expansions, the AfCFTA Hub to spearhead digital trade, among other initiatives. This one also says, why are borders still not opened in some countries? Hi. Louis Afo opines it may be due to security concerns.
Every now and again, Goil makes good things happen. This time, Goil has introduced Super XP Ron 95, a higher grade fuel loaded with additives and yet sold at the same price as normal fuel. Gold Super XP Run 95 enhances engine performance like never before. It maintains the engine by keeping it clean from carbon deposits. Gold Super XP Run 95 is designed to burn slowly and thus improves fuel economy, making you save money after several kilometers. Gold Super XP Run 95 gives you a smooth driving experience, that is, less vibrations. Fill up with Gold Super XP Run 95. Now there's no need to pay more for any higher grade fuel. Goil has that sorted. Goil, good energy.
Electricity, pay your taxes. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is. You still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Impressive factory. If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory and my warehouse.
Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse. And my machines that were affected by the floods have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance Motor Policy. Currently, my goods are on the IC covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance.
Oh, Ajima,
tell him more.
As a road contractor, I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance
for the projects and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, a new face of insurance. Call us now.
MPS Terminal 3 is Africa's new state-of-the-art container terminal at Tema Port. For manufacturers, agro-processors and traders, the new port means business can be done faster. This infrastructure boost will improve Ghana's port handling capacity, connect more trading routes, and oil the engine of growth for the economy, creating great opportunities across all sectors as Africa's markets merge and become the largest trading bloc globally. MPS, we connect, you thrive.
Welcome back from the break. Now let us take our lenses to the international scene and pick a few shipping and maritime related stories. Israel's Haifa port has been officially taken over by a consortium headed by India's Adani Group. The privatization conclusion comes on the back of the acquisition of the necessary approvals from Israeli's governmental bodies. A consortium of Adani Port and Special Economic Zone Limited and Israel's Gadot Group won the tender to privatize the port of Haifa in July 2022. The consortium's offer totals $1.15 billion, beating other 18 applicants for the port. Under the deal, the Adani Gadot Consortium has secured the rights to buy 100% shares of Haifa Port Company Limited, which operates the port of Haifa. The consortium won a concession to operate the port until 2050. The European Commission has given its approval for a €1.1 billion scheme to support the rollout of carbon capture and storage technologies in Denmark. The aid will be awarded through a competitive tendering procedure open to companies active in an industrial sector, including the waste and energy sectors, with conclusion to take place this year. The maximum amount will be equal to €54.9 million per year, adjusted to inflation. Under a 20-year contract, The beneficiary will capture and store an annual minimum of 0.4 million tons of carbon dioxide as from 2026. The aid will cover the difference between the estimated total cost of capturing and storing a ton of carbon dioxide over the lifetime of the contract and the return expected by the beneficiary. According to the European Commission, Denmark committed to ensuring that the aid delivers overall carbon dioxide reductions and that it does not merely displace the emissions from one sector to another. The measure is expected to increase investor confidence in CCS technology, reduce cost for future application of CCS technologies, and facilitates the development of a commercial CCS market in Denmark. It's now time for our Word of the Day segment, where we introduce to you words, jargons, phrases, terminologies that we often use on this platform and in this industry so you can get familiar with them. Today's phrase is cargo throughput. Cargo throughput is the sum of both the inward and outward cargo processed by a port in a given period. It's now time to take a look at the schedule of vessels that have berthed in the ports of Tema and Technocrats at the anchorages of both ports and those expected in the coming weeks, plus the Bank of Ghana exchange rates, which you may need to know to clear your cargo with. This is where we close today's edition of Eye on Port. We hope you've been informed and educated. Remember, all Eye on Port content can be found on our YouTube channel, Eye on Port. Like, subscribe, and give us feedback. Thank you for watching.